Hey guys, tonight we're doing something a little different. Something that might leave your modern senses mildly traumatized and your bedtime cup of tea severely underappreciated. We're dropping you straight into the thick of ancient China, right at sunrise, when roosters scream like alarm clocks possessed, and there's a suspicious smell of wet hay and incense in the air. You're not waking up in a plush bed or even a bamboo cot. Nope, you're curled up on a rice straw mat, sharing your wooden home with 3 generations of in-laws and approximately 12 chickens. The roof leaks the smoke from the cooking fire, has nowhere to go, and someone just sneezed directly into the soup pot. Outside, the gray morning mist clings to the rice paddies. You hear the rhythmic splash of hose hitting earth even before you open your crusty eyes. Welcome to the Han Dynasty, somewhere between 200 BCE and 200 CE, where life expectancy hovers around 35, and sleeping in is not only discouraged, it's downright dangerous. As your bare feet hit the cold mud floor, you step on something squishy. You hope it's a yam. It's not. You groan, and a relative scolds you for laziness before you've even spoken a word. You're already late. The concept of me time hasn't been invented yet. There's no toothbrush, no morning coffee. You rinse your mouth with salt water and chew on a twig if you're lucky. Your hair, oily and smoky from the previous night's fire, is pulled back into a tight knot with a piece of string that may or may not have previously tied up a pig. And if you think you're heading out in jeans and a hoodie adorable, you're wrapped in a coarse hemp robe, stiff with last month's sweat, tied with a sash that's also your emergency napkin. Historians still argue whether average villagers owned more than one outfit. But by the smell of it, you clearly don't. Outside, the village is already buzzing. Children chase geese elders, chant sutras, and your neighbor is yelling about how her fermented tofu was stolen again. You join a line to bow toward the ancestral shrine, because if you don't show filial piety, your relatives will shame you harder than 1,000 Weibo comments. By now, the scent of breakfast is in the air, if you can call it that. More on that horror in the next section. For now, your morning task is simple. Carry 2 buckets of water from the river with a splintery yoke across your shoulders. And guess what? You suck at it. You spill half the water. Your shoulders ache and someone laughs when you nearly fall into a muddy ditch. It's a child, possibly your cousin, definitely rude. A traveling fortune teller stops you. He says your chi is imbalanced and that your eyebrows look unlucky. He offers to realign your fate for 2 copper coins. You don't have 2 copper coins. You offer a duck feather. He declines. By the time you return, your little sister has taken your turn feeding the pigs. You thank her. She demands a favor in return, your half of tomorrow's pickled radish. No one is generous without strings here. You glance up at the sky. It's a hazy blue-gray, veiled with wood smoke, and the faint shimmer of impending humidity. You mutter a silent wish that maybe, just maybe today won't be the day you're conscripted into military service, or struck by falling roof tiles. Spoiler alert, it very well could be. But right now, you're just trying to stay upright, hydrated, and marginally clean, in a world where the concept of personal space is non-existent, and your next sneeze could be interpreted as either disrespect or demonic possession. And here's your daily reality check. You're already behind schedule, half-starved, and smelling like pickled sweat, and it's only 6:30 a.m. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and what time it is where you are. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You lift the lid off the family pot hoping for breakfast. But what you find inside deserves its own horror story. You lean over the clay pot simmering over last night's embers, and your nose is immediately assaulted by a smell that can only be described as if a gym sock went to war with a fish market and lost. This, dear traveler, is breakfast. Inside the pot, a cloudy broth bubbles lazily floating in it, are chunks of fermented radish, suspiciously gray millet, a few limp scallion tops, and something that might be a boiled scorpion, or a curled-up mushroom. You can't tell. You're too hungry to argue and too sleepy to resist. You scoop a portion into a chipped ceramic bowl. The broth is warm, which is a small mercy. But as you chew, a chalky bitterness floods your mouth, followed by a peppery aftershock that numbs your tongue. Is that Sichuan pepper? Already historians still argue whether commoners had access to such spices this early, but judging by your sudden inability to feel your lips, we'll say maybe. Your seat is a rickety, three-legged stool. Your table is your lap. And your breakfast company includes your cousin picking lice from his hair, and your grandfather softly humming a folk song about dying in the mountains. Comforting. Meanwhile, your little brother has snuck in from outside holding a preserved duck egg, its blackened surface reeking of ammonia. He cracks it open with pride, revealing a greenish-gray yolk that jiggles like it knows fear. You can't decide if he's showing off or plotting against you. As you force down your meal, you begin to notice just how little separates nourishment from bioweapon in ancient China. Food preservation methods are ingenious, yes, but they're also mildly terrifying. Salt, ash, clay, buried pots, and sunlight the original preservatives. No fridges, no expiration dates, and if something grows fur, they just scrape it off and keep going. There's a reason this is the civilization that invented pickling nearly everything from cabbage to pig feet to lotus root. If it can rot, it can ferment. If it can ferment, it can be breakfast. A chicken hops onto the table and starts pecking at your bowl. No one stops it. That chicken pays rent in eggs and attitude, and frankly, it's more respected than you. Just as you finish slurping the last of the murky broth, a neighbor bursts in carrying a tray of mooncakes. It's not the Mid-Autumn Festival. She just made too many. You're touched by the generosity until she demands you help repair her fence as payment. Ah, yes, the ancient tradition of guilt-wrapped pastry. You wipe your mouth with your sleeve because napkins are centuries away. Your stomach gurgles. Not in gratitude, more like a warning. And yet, the day is just beginning. Now let's talk about what you don't eat. There's no sugar, no coffee, no chocolate, no dairy unless you live near Mongols, and absolutely no cereal with milk, unless your idea of cereal is boiled wheat and your milk is room temperature goat. Even rice, that glorious staple of modern Chinese cuisine, is not as abundant as you'd think, especially if you're inland. Barley, millet, and sorghum are more common for the average peasant. Also, forks non-existent. You use chopsticks if you're lucky, or just your fingers if you're not. And woe unto you if you're left-handed, because in Confucian culture, that's the unclean hand. Good luck with your ambidextrous hygiene challenges later. Even the act of preparing food is a full-contact sport. You pound grain with stone mortars. You boil water over open fires that spew smoke into your eyes. Your clay pots crack at least once a week. And every meal is a group effort, because if you cook alone, people assume you're plotting something. Oh, and let's not forget the water. You drink from a well or a nearby river, which is also used for washing clothes, bathing, and occasionally more unfortunate tasks. You've got a 50-50 chance of getting a bacterial souvenir with every sip. Even the boiled stuff tastes like yesterday's ashes. Still, there's beauty in the chaos. The bamboo steamer hissing in the corner. The sizzle of sesame oil on a cast iron pan. The rhythmic scraping of rice from a wooden bowl. It's primitive, but it's also poetic in a way that smells kind of like smoke and fermented cabbage. In a rich household, one you do not belong to, you might get tender pork, belly-steamed dumplings, or jujube porridge. But here in your modest village luxury is a second helping of congee with extra pickled mustard root. And nobody, not even the emperor, gets brunch. You pause for a moment, trying to savor the odd combination of numb, tongue-bloated stomach and mild existential dread. It's the ancient version of full, but not satisfied. And, unfortunately, that sensation will become very familiar over the next few hours. The fire dims, the bowls are scraped clean, and the chickens start clucking louder, signaling the official end of breakfast. Everyone scatters to their tasks, leaving you to clean up. You scrape the burnt rice crust from the bottom of the pot with a tool that looks suspiciously like a garden hoe. Just before you toss the scraps to the pigs, your uncle stops you. He takes a small clump of rice, rolls it into a sticky ball, and wraps it in a lotus leaf. He says it's for the road, just in case you faint again. He grunts. How thoughtful. You slip the rice ball into your sleeve. It immediately stains your tunic with soy sauce. And with that, you step outside, stomach half-settled breath, mildly radioactive, and soul just a little bit broken by breakfast. You think, well, at least the worst part of the day is over. It's not. You take 2 steps out the door and step right into a puddle of something warm. Don't ask, just keep walking. Your morning task list awaits, but nature calls, and unfortunately nature doesn't provide plumbing. You wander around the back of the house to the family latrine, which is essentially a wooden shack built over a pit. There's no lock. There's also no seat, just 2 foot-sized planks, and a dark, sloshing void below. You hover, you pray, you squint at a spider the size of a dumpling, and you do your business while contemplating every choice that led you to this moment. Toilet paper cute. Here, you're expected to use a chisei, a reusable bamboo stick with a rounded end. It's been cleaned, they say. You try not to think too hard about what that means. Some historians suggest that these sticks were shared cleaned in water buckets between uses. Others argue families had their own sets. Either way, it's an experience you won't forget, and your dignity may never recover. You emerge a little shaken, a little damp, and a lot humbled. There's no soap, so you wash your hands in a communal basin that's seen better centuries. The water is cloudy. Someone's tooth is floating in it. You decide your hands are clean enough. Personal hygiene here is situational. Bathing happens weekly, if that. You heat water over an open fire, pour it into a large clay tub, and scrub yourself with coarse hemp cloth and ash soap. More often than not, the entire family shares the water. You go last. It's gray when it starts. It's chunky when you finish. Hair washing monthly. Maybe. You tie it back with strips of cloth, and if you're feeling fancy, rub crushed mugwort into your scalp to cleanse bad energy, which may or may not mean smell less like mildew. Now, about dental care. toothbrushes exist. In theory, some people chew on aromatic twigs or rub salt across their gums. But for most, your breath is just a social hazard people politely ignore. Unless you're royalty, in which case they write poems about it. You head to the local bathhouse, once a season maybe, where men and women bathe separately but within thin wooden walls. Privacy is minimal. Gossip is maximal. You'll learn more in the steam than from a year of royal edicts. Speaking of steam, the bathhouse is also a hotspot for lice, fleas, and athlete's foot. There's a man who offers to comb away curses using a rake-shaped device and some questionable herbs. You politely decline. He follows you anyway, muttering about demons hiding in your hairline. Historians still argue whether hygiene standards truly improved during certain dynasties, or whether the elite just smelled slightly less awful thanks to imported sandalwood oil. Either way, the average villager, you smells like smoke, sweat, and shame. Clothing doesn't help. Your tunic is made from raw hemp fibers, itchy, stiff, and unyielding. You cinch it with a rope belt. Underwear, a luxury. You get one layer, maybe two in winter. If you're lucky, you rotate between two outfits, work-worn and sleep-worn. They are, of course, the same outfit, just interpreted differently depending on your posture. You trudge down the dirt path, trying not to trip on your sandals, which are woven from straw and anxiety. Your feet are already blistered, and you've only walked 20 yards. On the way, you spot your friend May bathing in the river. She waves. You wave back. Then she yells that there's a dead fish floating upstream and screams at you to help fish it out before someone eats it. You pretend not to hear. You're already mentally exhausted. By mid-morning, the air thickens with heat and humidity. You start sweating through your robe. Not glistening. We're talking full-body fermentation. Ancient China doesn't do deodorant. Instead, you might carry a scented pouch filled with herbs around your neck if you're from a well-off family. Otherwise, you just hope the wind is blowing away from your neighbors. You finally reach the village well and join a line of tired, barefoot people. The pulley creaks. You lower the bucket and pull up water that looks a little murky, but not actively chunky. You call that a win. An old man beside you coughs into his sleeve and mutters something about bad air. Miasma theory is strong here, people. Believe illness spreads through foul smells, not germs. So, the local remedy: burn dried orange peel and cow dung to cleanse the air. You smile politely. Your sinuses scream. You carry your water home with a stick across your back. Every step makes the buckets sway and slosh. Your shoulders burn. Your palms blister. A dog follows you, hoping you'll drop something edible. You nearly trip over it and curse out loud, earning a disapproving glare from a passing monk. You get back, dump the water into the family vat, and wipe your forehead with the sleeve of your robe. It's soaked. With what exactly, you're no longer sure. Back inside, your grandmother calls you over. She's boiling herbs in a pot, making a cleansing tonic. It smells like feet and despair. She insists you drink it. You do. You immediately regret it. And so the hygiene rituals of the day are complete. You're not clean. You're not fresh. But you're slightly less disgusting than when you woke up. In ancient China, that's a win. Then your aunt walks in and announces that it's your turn to sweep the latrine pit. You sigh, grab the broom, and accept your fate. You shuffle toward the storage shed to grab the broom, which isn't really a broom, more like a bundle of bristles tied to a stick with what could be horsehair, or possibly just a very determined vine. You're off to freshen up the family latrine pit. Again, as you poke around with the broomstick, trying not to inhale too deeply, your tunic rides up for the 10th time today. You tug it down, but it's no use. The fit is boxy. The seams are scratchy, and the whole thing smells like the inside of a smokehouse. Because it is. You sleep next to the cooking fire. So does your robe. Let's talk about fashion. You're wearing a simple chenois, the kind of one-piece wraparound robe common to peasants during the Han Dynasty. It's made of unbleached hemp, itchy hot in the summer, and stiff as tree bark in the winter. If you were wealthier, maybe you'd wear dyed silk with long trailing sleeves. If you were a scholar, you'd have color-coded sashes to show your rank. But you've got a belt made of rope and a slightly damp armpit stain. You pass your cousin, who's wearing almost the exact same outfit, but he's got a little red patch sewn on his sleeve. He grins. That's how you know he got new fabric recently. Fashion flex Han style. Historians still argue whether lower-class people had much variation in daily dress or whether individuality was reserved for the elite. Either way, your current look says unpaid labor with mild heat stroke. Shoes, straw sandals again. They flap against the ground with every step and offer the same protection as a tortilla. Your feet are already developing a topography of blisters, scrapes, and mosquito bites. There's no such thing as arch support, and the village healer says your calluses are a sign of good character. Oh, and socks. If you're lucky, you get linen strips. Otherwise, you just go barefoot until winter. Then, it's foot wraps and prayer. Your headgear is a mess too. Technically, married women wear hairpins and men wear caps or futu cloth head wraps. But you're running late today, so your hair is tied with a piece of twine you found under the bed. It's already unraveling, and a fly is nesting somewhere near your temple. Appearance is everything here, but comfort is nothing. Clothing isn't just clothing, it's rank, duty, and identity. That's why there are edicts about who can wear what. Silk reserved. Colors like purple or vermilion forbidden for commoners. You wear drab earth tones because those are the only tones available. A group of local officials passes by. You immediately bow. Not just out of respect, but because your sleeve is too long and you can't see, so it's safer to bow blindly and hope you don't accidentally insult someone powerful. One of the officials is wearing black robes lined with jade buttons. His hair is lacquered and combed into a perfect topknot. He smells like sandalwood and privilege. You smell like boiled radish. You remember hearing that during the Tang Dynasty fashion exploded, people wore pleated skirts, embroidered silks, feathered hats. Even men wore makeup. But you are nowhere near the Tang Dynasty. You are knee-deep in latrine duty. A local tailor waves to you as you pass his stall. He's selling fabric scraps thimbles made from bone and what looks like a lopsided hat. He offers to patch your tunic for a boiled egg and half a song. You don't have either. You keep walking. You finally escape latrine duty and find a moment to breathe. You sit by a shallow stream, pull off your sandals, and wiggle your toes in the water. It's the closest thing you'll get to a foot spa. Just then, a nearby woman screeches. A breeze had flipped her outer robe open, revealing her under wraps. Scandal. Modesty is law, especially for women. One flash of ankle, and people start whispering about whether your family honors its ancestors properly. You decide to cover yourself, better tying your robe tighter. It cinches weirdly at the waist. Now you can't breathe, but at least you won't dishonor your bloodline by sneezing and flashing someone. Fashion in ancient China is unforgiving. The more uncomfortable it is, the more respectable you look. You've heard of noble women binding their feet, shrinking them to lotus-like shapes to impress future in-laws. You've also heard they faint regularly and have to be carried in sedan chairs. You envy them. Fainting sounds like a vacation. A traveling musician passes by his robe, stitched with silver thread. He sings of emperors and phoenixes and silk that flows like water. You close your eyes and imagine yourself in one of those outfits, graceful light admired. Then, a chicken pecks your foot and reminds you that fantasy is not your friend. You get up, brush off your robe, which just smears the dirt in, and head home for the midday meal. The fabric sticks to your back with sweat, and you're already developing a heat rash. You wonder if anyone would notice if you just wore nothing. Probably yes, and you'd probably be fined, or flogged, or publicly humiliated with a shame robe of bright yellow monstrosity worn by petty criminals. Even the concept of laundry is torture. You beat your clothes against stones, scrub them with ash and rice water, then hang them to dry in smoky air. They come back stiff, damp-smelling, and slightly more wrinkled than before. So, no, you are not fashion-forward. You are fashion-forced. And even though beauty rituals exist, powder blush combs made from tortoise shell, you don't have time. You've got buckets to carry and pigs to chase. Still, as the sun climbs high and your tunic begins to chafe, you whisper to yourself, "At least I'm not wearing armor," because that comes later. And it's worse. You're halfway through adjusting your stiff, chafing tunic when your name is shouted from across the field. It's your uncle. And, from the tone of his voice, this is not a call for tea and idle gossip. This is a call to work. You sigh, tighten the rope around your waist, and jog over. Your sandals flap like panicked ducks. Today, you're planting rice, or hauling bricks, or memorizing Confucian texts, or all three. The ancient Chinese workday is a choose-your-own-adventure, but all paths lead to exhaustion. Let's start with the rice fields. You wade into ankle-deep mud, the sun already punishing your back. The smell of warm algae mixes with the scent of your own fermenting socks. Every step squelches. Every mosquito sees you as an all-you-can-eat buffet. You bend, plant, straighten, repeat. The cycle is as old as the dynasties themselves. No tractors, no machinery. Just human backs bent like question marks under the weight of survival. You hear someone humming behind you. It's May again, singing a work song to keep her rhythm. Push it deep cover, quick. Say a prayer so roots will stick. It rhymes better in classical Chinese. A distant overseer yells for more speed. He's holding a wooden stick and not afraid to use it. You nod faster. Your legs are already jelly. At some point, you're given a break. 15 minutes. You sit under a tree guzzle warm barley tea from a gourd and try not to pass out. Someone offers you a rice ball with salted plum in the middle. You chew slowly, savoring every grain like it's your last. But your rest is short-lived. The brick kiln needs bodies. And apparently, your body is available. So now you're stacking sun-dried bricks under a sweltering sky. They're heavier than they look. Your robe clings to you, your shoulders burn, and your hands raw. You learn quickly that there's no such thing as "that's not my job." You're a laborer, a scholar, a mule. Depending on the season, you could be weeding, re-thatching the roof, delivering official messages or walking 20 miles to fetch a relative because someone had a dream involving a red carp. And now it's urgent. Work is not optional. It is sacred, a duty to family ancestors and the emperor, even if the emperor is several hundred miles away and hasn't bathed in a month. Historians still argue how grueling the peasant workday truly was. Some suggest seasonal flexibility, while others point to corvée labor-forced public service that conscripts you for weeks to build roads, canals, or temples. You're told it's for the good of the realm. It still ruins your back, and if you're lucky enough to be born into a scholarly family, congratulations, you now spend your days memorizing the 5 classics until your brain bleeds metaphors. Education is brutal. You write with a brush made of animal hair, dip it in ink. You had to grind yourself and copy Confucian maxims until they tattoo your dreams. One slip of the brush, one character out of line, and your teacher slaps your knuckles with a bamboo rod. Education is respect. Discipline is love. Supposedly, you once saw a boy cry after writing virtue with the wrong stroke order. He's now studying in a cave. On purpose. Lunch comes, and with it a bowl of congee watery rice porridge that you slurp between gasps of air. There's a chunk of salted fish in it. You thank the heavens. The fish, however, does not return the sentiment. It stares at you with pickled indifference. You overhear 2 workers discussing omens. A crow landed on the village gate. Bad luck. Someone found a cracked egg. Worse luck. There's talk of making offerings, burning joss paper, planting prayer flags, fasting under the moon. You make a mental note to pretend you're sick tomorrow. But for now, you go back to hauling. Your spine is a question mark, your hands are blistered, and your robe now has permanent salt stains. A monk passes by offering blessings for a copper coin. You give him a look that says, "Do I look like someone with coins?" He smiles anyway. Hands you a sprig of mugwort. Tells you it wards off fatigue. You chew it. It tastes like regret. Work continues. The sun starts to dip, but no one stops. Not yet. You're tasked with sweeping out the granary, tying bundles of thatch, feeding the oxen, and fetching more water, because someone kicked over the last bucket. It was you. You don't admit this. And even when the physical work ends, your duties don't. You're expected to kneel before your elders, recite your daily learning, and help the children brush their hair, and tell stories about dragons, fox spirits, or the great you who tamed the floods. You sit down next to a lantern and stitch a tear in your robe. Your fingers are clumsy. The needle is bent. You prick yourself twice. You wonder if anyone else feels this tired. They do, but no one says it out loud. Ancient China doesn't celebrate exhaustion. It assumes it. If you complain, you're called soft as tofu, which would be fine, except no one respects tofu. So you finish your stitching bow to the family altar and whisper a quiet thanks to your ancestors. Not because you're especially spiritual, but because if you fall sick tomorrow, they might take the blame. You crawl into your straw mat just as the crickets begin their nightly concert. Every muscle in your body screams. But there's something oddly soothing in the rhythm of it all. You survived another workday. Barely. But guess what? Tomorrow, you do it all again. You wake up sore. Not the good kind of sore after a satisfying workout, but the "my spine may be made of damp bamboo" kind of sore. The rooster's already gone hoarse from crowing, and you can hear someone arguing about stolen firewood. Again. But today's not just about rice or bricks. or scalding your tongue on hot broth. Today, you get a taste of power, well, sort of. You're summoned to help deliver documents to the local magistrate's office. And in ancient China, that means stepping into the tangle of bureaucracy so dense it could suffocate a dragon. You wipe the crust from your eyes, splash some rice water on your face, and put on your nice robe. It's the same as your work robe, but you brushed it this time, so it's practically couture. You arrive at the local yamen, the administrative center run by a magistrate. It looks impressive. Tiled roof, red pillars, and a plaque carved with Confucian quotes. Inside, however, it smells like mildew ink and bureaucratic despair. A man at the gate squints at you. You present your humble document sealed with a blob of wax and a chicken feather. He waves you in without a word. You're in. The walls are lined with scrolls, brushes, and officials fanning themselves with bamboo slips. Every clerk here looks half asleep except for the one in the corner, who's aggressively chewing on what might be ginseng root, or just a stick out of spite. You learn quickly that bureaucracy in ancient China is less organized administration and more spiritual trial by paperwork. There are forms for rice collection, pig births, road repairs, weather patterns, and even cloud shapes if you're reporting omens. The files are bound with twine stored in rows of dusty shelves and written in beautiful but exhausting calligraphy. Your job, copy this tax ledger in triplicate, using brush and ink, and don't smudge a character or it's back to the start. You dip the brush your hand, trembling. The ink runs. The first character drips like a horror movie. You hear someone tut behind you. You are 0.2 seconds into your task, and already a disgrace. While you painstakingly copy numbers, a scribe nearby is drafting a notice about a rogue goat in the market square. It will be posted on the village wall like a wanted poster. The goat has a name. You consider fleeing the yamen and joining its rebellion. But you stay. Now, here's the thing about power in ancient China. It's all about examinations. The imperial exam system known as the Keiju is the golden staircase to influence. You dream of ascending it, but each step is paved with memorization insomnia and ink-stained breakdowns. To even qualify, you'd have to memorize thousands of Confucian phrases, master, the 4 books and 5 classics, and write essays so elegant they make poets weep. And if you do well, you might rise, become a Zyukai flowering talent, then maybe a Jurin recommended man, and if the stars align, a Jinchi, a presented scholar. But historians still argue how accessible this path really was to commoners. In theory, anyone could take the exams. In practice, the poor were too busy surviving to become metaphysical philosophers. You, for example, can barely remember where you left your sandals. A bell rings. Lunch break. You've copied 3 scrolls and possibly invented a new dialect in the process. You step out into the courtyard, where a group of junior clerks is playing a guessing game involving poetry fragments and sticks. You join in. You lose terribly. They mock you affectionately. You feel like one of them. Then a man in a robe 3 shades darker than everyone else's steps out of the main hall. He is the magistrate. His beard is sharp, his gaze sharper. He doesn't look at you directly. He looks through you like he's reading the footnotes of your soul. He gives a short speech about virtue taxes and something about a celestial mandate. Everyone nods. You nod too. You understood 3 words. 2 of them were rice and don't. The magistrate leaves. The crowd exhales. Later that afternoon, you're sent to help a lower scribe document the weight of livestock. It's exactly as thrilling as it sounds. You record the girth of a cow using hemp string, and then try to calculate the tax rate using a system no one has updated since the Zhou Dynasty. Oh, and the units, they don't match, because ancient China loved its Li Jin Dan and Shi, all of which vary slightly, depending on region dynasty, and whether someone's uncle had a headache while inventing the standard. Your head throbs. On your way out of the yamen, you pass a board with a notice pinned to it. It's a list of exam results. One name has been circled in red. Beneath it, people have placed flowers. The successful scholar has gone to the capital. You feel a tug in your chest. Maybe one day. A small voice beside you mutters, "Don't dream too hard. The ink will dry before the dream does." It's the ginseng stick scribe. He winks, then sneezes into a scroll. You leave. As you return to the village, you think about power. Real power. Not the kind that swings a sword, but the kind that writes one edict and changes your life. Back home, your aunt greets you with a bowl of soup and a complaint about how the rice looks sad. You sip slowly, still tasting the ink in your throat. Tomorrow, you'll be back in the fields. But today, you touch the edge of the system, and it touched you back with paperwork. You're home from the yamen just long enough to pull your sandals off and stretch your aching fingers when a distant clanging sound stops you cold. It's rhythmic, metallic, unmistakable, the village alarm bell. You freeze. Everyone does. A child drops a turnip. An old man curses under his breath. Something's wrong. You follow the sound to the town square, where a small crowd has already gathered. At the center stands the village constable, holding a wooden board engraved with this morning's offense. A boy, no more than 15, kneels beside him trembling. His robe is stained, his face pale. He's accused of stealing a dried fish from a market stall. You watch in quiet horror as the punishment is announced public humiliation. And one day, in the Kangai, a heavy wooden collar that sits on the shoulders, locking the neck in place. It's not just painful. It's a spectacle, a portable billboard of disgrace. You shift your weight uncomfortably as the boy is fitted with the device. He can't scratch his nose. He can't eat without assistance. He can't even lie down. He's marched through the village, head bobbing under the weight and tied to a post where passers-by can see him and sometimes spit. This is ancient China's legal system in motion. Confucian morality meets cold practicality. See, crime here isn't always punished with imprisonment. That's expensive, time-consuming. Prisons are for repeat offenders or people awaiting something worse. For minor offenses, public shame, corporal punishment, or heavy symbolism do the job. You've heard of the ducking stool of punishment, where offenders are tied to a chair and dunked repeatedly into a pond. Or the face tattoo penalty used in earlier dynasties, where criminals had their crimes inked permanently into their skin. Historians still argue whether the tattoos were purely punitive or also marked the person for life within caste systems. Either way, ouch. If things escalate, you might see beatings with a bamboo rod. Not metaphorical, not gentle. You kneel, receive the sentence, and the rod comes down on your back or thighs until justice, or something like it, is achieved. But here's the twist. Punishment isn't always about the act. It's about maintaining order. The Confucian worldview is obsessed with harmony structure, knowing your place. When someone disrupts that balance, even by stealing a fish, it's not just theft. It's disharmony. And disharmony is contagious. so punishment is performative. A warning, a story told in bruises and wooden collars. You walk past a small temple of law, where carved tablets display the 5 punishments from tattooing and cutting off the nose to mutilation and death. They've been updated over the dynasties, some abolished, some reformed. But the fear they inspire that lingers. Inside the temple, incense burns before a statue of Bao Zheng, the legendary Song Dynasty judge who became a symbol of incorruptible justice. You bow instinctively. Even now, justice feels half divine, half administrative headache. As you leave, a local woman hisses that someone in her alley was accused of practicing black magic. You raise an eyebrow. She nods. She boiled pig bones under a full moon, the woman whispers. Tried to summon a wind spirit. You don't ask what happened next. You don't want to know. Back in your own courtyard, your cousin is telling a story to a group of wide-eyed children. He talks about the Imperial Censorate, a group of officials whose job was to spy on other officials. They could accuse a minister of corruption, even the emperor, he says dramatically. Did they ever? A child asks. He grins. They tried. Once, you sit down beside them. You think about how fragile safety is here, how one word, one wrong glance, one ill-timed joke could spiral into punishment. You remember the boy in the kang, sweating, stoic, alone. And yet, there's another side. You've heard of village mediators, respected elders who settle disputes without official punishment. They gather both parties, light incense, offer tea, and try to restore peace. It's quiet justice, personal, Confucian. It doesn't involve rods or collars, just reputation and reconciliation. You remember your grandmother once solved a boundary dispute by giving up half her garden and offering her finest tofu. The other family wept. They sent duck eggs the next day. Harmony restored, but the state still looms. The legalists believed strict laws and harsh penalties were the only way to rule. The Confucians disagreed, favoring virtue, family, and shame over violence. The tension between those two ideas runs deep through the veins of every village, every home. And where does that leave you? You try to keep your head down. You don't steal fish. You bow when you should. You say yes, even when your spine says no. Because the line between order and punishment is drawn in dust, and one breeze can erase it. As the sun sets, the boy is released from his kang. His family helps him home. No one cheers, no one jeers. It's just quiet, the way shame hangs in the air like smoke. You light a small oil lamp in your room, whisper a quick prayer to your ancestors, and check your robe for holes. You'll patch them tomorrow. Tonight, you rest. Not because you're safe, but because you made it through another day without becoming a lesson carved into wood. It's barely dawn when your mother yanks you from your straw mat and mutters, "They're here." You blink, dazed, still sore from yesterday's run-in with justice and rice fields. "Who's here?" you ask, mouth dry. She doesn't answer, just throws a robe over your head and ushers you outside. You see the procession, first bright red banners, clanging gongs, and a man walking ahead with a scroll, nearly as long as your future. Then comes the bride, or at least someone dressed as one. She's veiled, head bowed, under an ornate headdress that jingles with every step. Behind her trails a dowry parade, bolts of silk-lacquered boxes, chickens, and decorative cages, a bronze mirror. And wait, is that a sack of soybeans? Yes. Apparently, soybeans are auspicious. Today is a wedding day, and the village has turned into a theater. You're told the bride is marrying a man from 3 villages over. She's never met him. She's not allowed to look up. She was matched by her parents. Her birth charts cross-checked against the stars, the winds, and probably someone's gut feeling. Historians still argue how much say women truly had in the process. Some families were lenient. Others treated daughters like livestock with decorative hairpins. The bride climbs into a sedan chair, carried by 4 sweating men, her dowry bundled in a cart behind. Somewhere in the crowd, a matchmaker beams like a general after a successful campaign. She negotiated this. In a world where marriage is economics, politics, and fate rolled into one, she is both broker and battlefield medic. Suddenly, your aunt leans over and whispers, "They say her husband died 2 weeks ago." Wait, what? You blink. She nods solemnly. It's a ghost marriage. His spirit needs a bride, so he won't wander hungry in the afterlife. You choke on your own spit. Ghost marriages were rare, but not unheard of. When an unmarried man died, young, his family might still marry him to a living or equally deceased woman. The wedding goes on. The rituals are performed. Paper effigies of furniture and servants are burned as dowry to the afterlife. The living bride might then live with her in-laws as a widow, or if she was also deceased, her spirit would be symbolically united with the groom. You glance back at the bride. Is she alive? You think so. You hope so. The village is split. Some say it's noble. Others whisper it's a curse. But no one protests. Harmony must be maintained, even in the afterlife. Back home, your father pulls out an old scroll with your own 8 characters. Your birth year, month, day, and hour. He's checking compatibility for you. With who you ask, he won't say. Just mutters something about your ears being unlucky and disappears into a room filled with incense and astrological charts. You wonder if it's too late to flee to the Mongolian steppes and become a goat. Marriage here isn't about love. It's about duty, alliances, legacy. You've seen marriages arranged before birth. You've seen girls married off at 13. And once a wealthy widow married a younger scholar purely to keep her land holdings. Scandalous, efficient. Ceremonies vary by class. The wealthy get multi-day feasts, musicians elaborate costumes, and enough incense to fumigate a temple. You'll get a red robe, a bow to the ancestors, and perhaps a duck. If you're lucky, it's cooked. During weddings, there's always a symbolic ritual, the bowing sequence. One to heaven and earth. One to the ancestors. One to each other. You wonder what it would be like to bow to someone you actually know. Or like. Or who doesn't haunt your dreams. The bride's procession winds through the village, firecrackers popping, drums pounding. You see a woman quietly crying by her door. Her daughter was married off last month and hasn't written since. Literacy isn't guaranteed. Emotional closure is not part of the package. Your neighbor jokes that he married his wife after seeing her carry water for 8 days without falling once. Strong legs, steady arms, no back talk. He laughs. She scowls from the doorway, holding a broom. You suspect she married him for the roof tiles. Divorce, technically possible. If a wife committed one of the 7 outs: infertility, jealousy, theft, disobedience to in-laws, or speaking too much among others, she could be dismissed. But social stigma made it rare. Often she simply returned to her family, which was code for prepare to beg for food. Men could remarry easily. Widows, not so much. Chastity was a virtue. Some widows were praised for never remarrying. Others committed ritual suicide to follow their husbands into the afterlife. It was considered honorable, if terrifying. Your cousin once claimed she saw a young widow leap into her husband's funeral pyre during the Tang Dynasty reenactment festival. Turns out she just tripped, but the crowd applauded anyway. You think about your future. If you're lucky, your parents will match you with someone whose family raises ducks, owns a decent loom, and doesn't scream at ghosts. Love is optional. Stability is everything. That night, the village hosts a small feast. You're given a red egg and a slice of sweet rice cake. You chew slowly, watching the lanterns drift up into the sky. Each carries a hope, a wish, or maybe just a mosquito. The bride has vanished into her new home, veiled in ritual and obligation. Somewhere, her new mother-in-law is telling her how to hold a broom properly. Her husband, dead or alive, is silent. You walk home, full of rice and questions. You wonder if ghosts argue. You wonder if you'll ever choose your own fate. You wonder if in some other life, you were the one wearing red and walking into the unknown. You're jolted awake the next morning by the distant beat of ceremonial drums and a clatter of hooves on stone. Something big is happening, bigger than ghost weddings and rice field dramas. The neighbors whisper it's a royal envoy passing through, but no one really knows. All they know is to bow. Quickly, you dash out robe flapping and find half the village lined up along the main road. A parade of ornately dressed officials in gold-trimmed robes rides in on horseback, flanked by attendants wielding fan scrolls and banners that shimmer in the sunlight. They glide past you like a cloud made of silk and strict rules. And then the sedan chair, lacquered, draped in crimson and guarded by unsmiling soldiers. Inside, maybe a high-ranking eunuch, maybe a provincial governor, maybe even someone from the imperial court. You'll never know. What you do know is this: you don't make eye contact, ever. You press your forehead to the ground and feel the dirt stick to your sweat. It's not reverence, it's survival. Welcome to the royal hierarchy of ancient China. You see, the emperor is more than a ruler. He's the son of heaven, the bridge between earth and the divine. His power is absolute, but it's also conditional. He rules by the mandate of heaven, an ancient doctrine that says he can govern only as long as heaven deems him worthy. Natural disasters, peasant rebellions. Those aren't just bad luck. They're heaven's way of filing a complaint. Historians still argue whether the mandate of heaven was a political excuse or a genuine belief. Either way, it kept emperors up at night and gave every rebellion a cosmic permission slip. You've never seen the emperor, of course. Most people haven't. But his presence is everywhere, in tax edicts, temple inscriptions, even your bedtime stories. You've heard tales of wise emperors who disguised themselves and roamed the countryside to understand the people. But more often, the stories involve execution for sneezing in the wrong direction. Inside the palace, things aren't as glamorous as they sound. The Forbidden City, centuries later, would become a symbol of imperial grandeur, but even now, royal life is a cage made of jade and protocol. The emperor wakes to music, eats food prepared by taste testers, because poison is a real career risk and can't sneeze without someone noting it, down on bamboo slips. He is surrounded by eunuchs, castrated men, who serve in the inner court. Some are low-level servants, others wield immense influence. There's always a rumor that one eunuch controls the kitchen, another controls the flow of palace secrets, and one might even be pulling the strings of the emperor himself. You've heard of one who became so powerful that nobles bowed to him. Eunuchs were both feared and pitied. Some were born into poverty. and saw castration as a ticket to a better life. Others were forced into it. Either way, they navigate a brutal world of gossip, backstabbing, and ceremonial fan-waving. Women in the palace don't fare much better. The empress, the concubines, the palace maids all live within the inner court, rarely stepping outside. Politics thrives in the shadows there. One whispered insult could mean demotion. A broken vase, treason. You've heard of one concubine who rose from kitchen helper to imperial favorite, simply by composing a poem about plum blossoms. You've also heard of another who vanished overnight after speaking during a thunderstorm. Superstition, probably, but no one dares to find out. And don't get too comfortable in your provincial village either. One day, the emperor might decide to tour the region bringing a retinue of thousands. Your village would be expected to provide food, lodging, entertainment, probably your best pigs and most enthusiastic dancers. Can't keep up, expect punishment. Or worse, silence, the kind that comes before taxes triple. Your uncle once joked, "The emperor is like a tiger, majestic to look at, terrifying to feed." You didn't laugh. Tigers don't either. Still, power is seductive. The call of the capital Chang'an or Luoyang, depending on the dynasty, is strong. Scholars dream of presenting their essays at court. Warriors long for a command. Merchants crave a license stamped with the imperial seal. But you mostly crave a quiet life without getting trampled by the wheels of history. As the envoy disappears down the road, the dust settles. Villagers rise slowly, brushing off dirt, murmuring prayers. You spot a small boy still bowing, afraid to move. His mother lifts him gently. Back home, your family buzzes with questions. Did you see the gold tassels? That fan was embroidered with dragons. I heard the emperor eats 8 meals a day. You smile. You say nothing. You're too busy digesting the weight of a system so large, so distant, and yet so terrifyingly near. That night, your dreams are filled with palace corridors that stretch endlessly, echoes of ceremonial drums and faceless men in silk who speak only in riddles. You wake up sweating, tangled in your mat, and deeply relieved to still be a nobody. Because here in ancient China, the closer you are to power, the closer you are to danger. You wake to the sound of gagging. Not yours for once, but your little brother's. He's hunched over a wooden bucket, pale as rice paper, groaning between heaves. You rush over and touch his forehead. Burning, not metaphorically. You nearly scorch your hand. Great, he's sick. And in ancient China, that's rarely just a family problem. It's a cosmic one. Within the hour, your home is filled with thick smoke and the sharp scent of burning mugwort. Your grandmother is already muttering prayers under her breath, circling your brother with a bundle of smoldering herbs. A nearby neighbor peeks in and whispers, "Could be a fever demon." You want to laugh. You don't. Because deep down, you're a little worried it might be. Welcome to the medical world of pre-modern China. Equal parts science spirit and serious guesswork. A village healer arrives, an older man with more hair in his ears than on his head. His medicine bag creaks as he opens it, revealing an assortment of scrolls, dried beetles, ginseng roots, and something that looks suspiciously like a cricket. He doesn't explain. He never does. First, he takes your brother's pulse, not once, not twice, but in 12 places. Different fingers, different angles. He nods, frowns, nods again, then declares that your brother's kuai is blocked, his yin is overheated, and his spleen is emotionally fatigued. You didn't even know a spleen had feelings. He prescribes a tonic made from boiled chrysanthemum petals. Crushed pearls, you won't be affording that, and bare bile, you definitely won't be affording that. You nod solemnly, substitute half the ingredients with dandelions, and hope for the best. Meanwhile, he starts cupping, placing heated glass bulbs on your brother's back, leaving circular bruises that look like octopus hickeys. Then come the needles, acupuncture, they call it. He explains the body is a system of energy meridians. Block one, and your toe aches when your heart is sad. Logical. You've heard stories one healer swore by powdered tiger bones. Another insisted on ingesting gold flakes to balance the humors. One woman treated a cough by hanging upside down near a bell tower. It worked. Or maybe the cough just gave up. Historians still argue about the true effectiveness of these remedies. Some practices like acupuncture and herbal medicine have survived and evolved, backed by modern studies. Others, like drilling holes in skulls to release evil spirits. Not so much. Still desperate times call for dandelions and fire cups. You help your brother sip the bitter tonic. He makes a face that says, "This is what betrayal tastes like." You agree. Then take a sip yourself. Immediately regret it. And just when you think the worst is over, your father starts coughing. Cue panic. In a time before germ theory, illness spreads like rumors, fast, mysterious, and often deadly. You've lived through smallpox, scares, dysentery outbreaks, and once a whole season where everyone smelled like boiled garlic because someone said it cured everything. There's a general belief that bad air miasma causes disease, so people burn incense, scatter camphor, or wear little sachets filled with aromatic herbs. They avoid unclean places like swamps, graveyards, or anywhere your cousin Bao hangs out. Hospitals don't exist yet. Monasteries sometimes offer care, and wealthy households might hire personal physicians, but you rely on local healers, traveling apothecaries, and faith. The deadliest threat, epidemics. When those hit, fear becomes policy. People hang red banners, stop traveling, and some even quarantine entire villages. You've heard of families bricking themselves into homes with a week's supply of rice and fermented bean paste. It sometimes works, sometimes. Back in your hut, you try to cool your brother with a damp cloth. He sleeps now, brow less fiery, limbs no longer twitching. You breathe out. Your mother lights incense and thanks the ancestors. Not for a cure, but for a delay. You know this won't be the last time. Later that day, a traveling medicine seller rolls into town with a wooden cart full of wonder cures, deer antler powder, snake wine dried seahorses, and a jar labeled dragon's breath. Probably mint, maybe not. He's shouting about a new elixir that can cure fatigue, heartbreak, and constipation all at once. You raise an eyebrow. 3 farmers buy it instantly. You also hear about spiritual cures, monks who chant for days to cleanse a sick soul. There's even talk of a fox spirit haunting a nearby well, causing belly aches. A local exorcist was summoned. He wore red robes and slapped a talisman on a goat. The goat seemed confused. The villagers applauded. But healing isn't always this chaotic. Traditional Chinese medicine is also poetic. It sees the body as a garden. Water must flow, wind must pass, fire must be tamed. The heart stores joy, the liver anger, the kidneys fear. It's an ecosystem, not just a machine. It's beautiful, until you realize that treating liver wind with dried earthworms means exactly what it sounds like. By evening, your brother is sitting up sipping rice porridge. He's not smiling, but he's not melting either. That's a win. You lie beside him on the mat, both of you staring at the flickering lantern. He whispers, "Do you think it was a demon?" You think for a moment, then shake your head. No, just a tired spleen. He giggles, then coughs. You both freeze, and then laugh again. Quietly, carefully, because sometimes laughter is the strongest medicine you've got. The next morning, your brother is well enough to complain again, a true sign of recovery. But before you can celebrate with another cup of salty tea, your grandmother shushes everyone and whispers, "Today is an unlucky day." You pause mid-sip. Not this again. She holds up a crinkled almanac. The Tongshu, its pages inked with diagrams of stars, zodiac beasts, and cryptic instructions like avoid funerals, favor east-facing windows, and don't touch goats after noon. You don't ask. You never ask. Because in ancient China, the line between medicine and magic logic and legend is a beautifully tangled thread. This is a world where dragons control rainfall, fox spirits, steel hearts, and paper money burns its way into the afterlife. Everything you do, from where you plant your rice to when you cut your nails, is tethered to cosmic order. Let's start with the ancestors. They're not gone. Not really. They're just watching. Always. You keep a shrine in the corner of your home, cleaned daily offerings of rice, wine incense, and sometimes sticky rice cakes placed with trembling hands. You speak to them like they're in the next room, because in a way they are. You once forgot to bow before eating. That night, the cooking pot cracked. Your mother cried. Coincidence? No such thing. Then there are the spirits, some helpful, some vengeful, most easily offended. Take the kitchen god, for example. He lives above the stove, tucked behind a smoky talisman. At year's end, he ascends to heaven to report on your family's behavior. So, naturally, your mother smears honey on his lips before he goes, so his report will be sweet. You'd laugh, but you're the one who has to clean the soot afterward. You've also heard of hungry ghosts, spirits with distended bellies and tiny throats forever starving. They wander the world feeding on forgotten offerings and unspoken regrets. During Ghost Month, nobody dares swim whistle at night or hang laundry after sundown. It's not fear, it's etiquette. And feng shui. It's not just a way to decorate your hut. It's a cosmic GPS. Your bed must not face the door. Your ancestors' graves must align with the dragon vein in the mountain. Your rice granary must avoid being in the mouth of the white tiger. Again, don't ask, just nod. Historians still argue whether these beliefs were tools of social cohesion or genuine cosmological systems. But here in your village, they are as real as the mud between your toes. You once watched a man hire a geomancer to inspect a plot of land. The man arrived with a compass, a scroll, and a chicken. 3 hours later, the deal was off. Something about a cursed stone and a northward shadow. The chicken was fine. Religion here isn't one thing. It's a braided river of Taoism, Buddhism, Confucianism, and folk practice all weaving into daily life. One day, you're burning incense for Guanyin, the goddess of mercy. The next, you're tying a red thread around your wrist to ward off dog spirits. You've prayed in Buddhist temples, knelt before Taoist sages, and watched a man draw a protective talisman using chicken blood and crushed cinnabar. It glowed in the firelight. You didn't sleep for 2 nights. One time, your neighbor tried to exorcise a spirit by beating a wok with a soup ladle while shouting, "Come out, you ugly shrimp," it worked. Or the ghost just left out of second-hand embarrassment. You've seen paper effigies burned for the dead houses, servants, horses, even paper smartphones, and luxury cars in the later dynasties. The idea is simple. Burn it here, and it appears in the afterlife. You wonder if there's traffic in Ghost Chang'an. Probably. The economy of the unseen world is booming. Speaking of economy, money here isn't just bronze coins on red string. There's also joss paper, also known as hell, money burned in stacks during funerals or anniversaries. It's not actual currency, of course, but try telling that to your uncle who spends hours folding origami ingots out of golden foil. Don't shortchange the ancestors, he says. They hold grudges. You once asked if there were ghost taxes. He didn't laugh. Superstition is woven into commerce, too. You avoid saying the number 4C because it sounds like she, meaning death. You never sweep on New Year's lest you brush away good fortune. And if you break a bowl, you immediately say, Sui, sui. Ping'an, may every year be peaceful. It's ritual damage control. And let's not forget the zodiac. You were born in the year of the rat. Clever, quick, but prone to hoarding. Your crush, a horse. It'll never work. Everyone says so. Opposing signs, opposing elements. You once liked a dragon. Your grandma gasped so loud birds flew away. So today, when your grandmother says it's an unlucky day, no one argues. You stay home. No travel, no deals, no weddings. Even the chickens seem quieter. You burn incense. You light a red candle. You bow to the kitchen god. Just in case. At night, you lie on your mat, the faint scent of sandalwood curling in the air. You feel protected, or at least less cursed. Because in ancient China, staying alive isn't just about food and shelter. It's about harmony with heaven, with the earth, and with all the unseen things in between. You're just finishing your morning bowl of congee plain thin, and as emotionally empty as your love life, when your father bursts through the doorway red-faced and shouting, he's been conscripted. The entire house freezes. Who your mother demands. Your father looks straight at you. You choke on your congee, and, just like that, your name is scribbled onto a wooden registry, and by midday you're marching alongside a dozen other stunned villagers toward a construction site that stretches beyond the horizon. Welcome to the Great Wall of China, not the postcard version. No brick-and-mortar pride, no tourists taking selfies. This is the raw, back-breaking, sun-scorched prototype, winding across the landscape like a scar. You weren't enlisted to fight. You were enlisted to build. And its less epic defense project and more. Let's see how many men we can bury in mortar. Historians still debate the exact death toll. Some say hundreds of thousands perished building the wall. Others argue that number is exaggerated. But one thing is clear, the wall wasn't just made of stone. It was made of sweat blood and occasionally bone. Your job, mix lime and water into slurry, then layer it between stamped earth molds, over and over. Hour after hour, you carry baskets of dirt up ladders that creak like they're telling you to turn back. You don't, because no one does, not without consequences. You're issued a crude shovel, a rice ration, and a patch of ground to sleep on. There's no pillow, just your arm and the eternal ache in your spine. You work under overseers with bamboo whips and a very loose definition of motivation. A man next to you drops his bucket and collapses. No one speaks. No one moves. He's replaced within an hour. You watch the wall grow inch by inch, like a cruel monument to someone else's legacy. It snakes through cliffs, deserts, and mountains defying logic, but never weather. Rain turns the ground to sludge. Wind drives grit into your eyes. Snow is just nature's way of testing who really wants to see spring. At night, the wind howls. You huddle with your fellow workers beneath a tarp that smells like mildew and regret. Someone starts a folk song. Another joins in. Soon, you're all singing off-key but full-hearted. It's not joy. It's survival through rhythm. You share ghost stories to pass the time of wall spirits of souls buried alive within the structure. One tale tells of a woman named Meng Jiangnu, whose husband died during construction. When she cried at the wall, it crumbled to reveal his bones. A miracle, or maybe just good masonry timing. You ask if it's true. Someone shrugs. The wall eats everyone eventually. Food rations are thin, mostly rice with occasional salted vegetables and fermented bean paste. Meat, a rumor. Tea, a memory. Water is brackish. You strain it through your sleeve and pray to not cough for the next 3 days. The work is constant, sunup to sundown. The only rest is when your hands bleed too much to grip a shovel. And even then, you're expected to supervise someone else. One day, a traveling inspector rides through. He's dressed in black silk on horseback holding a scroll you're too tired to read. He doesn't speak to you, just glances, nods, and moves on. Your friend whispers, "He gets paid to check if we're still alive." You look down at your cracked hands, your splintered sandals, your sleeves stiff with dried sweat. You wonder if this counts as alive. Yet you persist. Somehow. Because every brick laid is a small resistance against being forgotten, even if no one ever knows your name. Historians romanticize the wall as a symbol of unity. But for you, it's a symbol of endurance, of how long a person can last when sleep, food, and warmth are just memories you fold into each other. There are jokes among the workers, dark, biting jokes. When you die here, they don't bury you. They just keep building over your body. You laugh, kind of. It's not even funny. It's just real. One night, as you lie watching the stars blur with dust, you think of home. Your brother's stupid jokes, your mother's dumplings, your cousin's cursed duck. You imagine returning, but even that dream is heavy. Like the bricks you carry, you fall asleep and wake up swinging a pickaxe. One day bleeds into the next, until finally, months later, your name is called. You've served your rotation. You're allowed to go home. You don't cheer. You just nod-shoulder your satchel and begin the long walk back, each step echoing with the sound of labor loss and a strange kind of pride. The wall didn't break you. It almost did. But you're still here, cracked, calloused, quieter. But here. And you now understand something unspoken. The wall was never about keeping enemies out. It was about keeping order in. You limp back into your village, thinner, browner, and quieter than when you left. Someone calls your name. You nod, but you don't stop walking. The dust of the wall still clings to your robe, and your feet feel like they've forgotten what rest means. Your mother weeps when she sees you. Your brother says you smell like pickled firewood. You smile just a little. But rest, not really an option. You've barely finished your welcome meal, a generous bowl of millet soybeans and what may or may not be duck, when your uncle pulls you aside and mutters, "We've got salt trouble." Of course you do. You soon learn that while you were gone, the salt officials from the next district cracked down on black market vendors. The price of salt has doubled. Your village, far from the main roads, now sees salt less often than shooting stars. And as you well know, in ancient China, salt isn't just seasoning. It's power. You dive back into the world of trade, except it's not just rice for wheat anymore. It's silk, salt iron, and suspicion. Trade here is a dangerous dance of taxes, tolls, and trust. The government often monopolizes vital goods salt, especially using it to control both economy and obedience. If you want to sell salt, you need a license. If you want to buy it legally, you need coin. If you want to smuggle it well, you need speed and silence. The Silk Road is booming out there somewhere beyond the mountains. Merchants carry textiles, tea porcelain, and even rhubarb across deserts and empires. But in your world, the Silk Road is a distant dream. You're stuck in the Salt Road, which is shorter, sweatier, and much more likely to get you arrested. Your cousin tells you about a man who tried to sneak salt past a tax checkpoint by hiding it in his shoes. The official made him walk 20 miles in circles. Sweated it out, he grins. You don't laugh. You've seen what happens when someone gets caught with illegal grains, whipping fines, and public shame. Salt worse. Still, the black market thrives. At night, cloaked figures meet at the riverside trading sacks of white crystals for dried fish, arrowheads, and even favors. You go once just to watch. You don't speak. You don't blink. You see the glint of a knife beneath someone's sleeve and decide that salted porridge is overrated anyway. And it's not just salt. Spices are currency. Peppercorns are status symbols. You've heard of a noblewoman in the capital who bathes with a pinch of cinnamon just to open her kui. You've also heard cinnamon is worth more than your house. Trade is a lifeline and a threat. Every village has a middleman, the fast-talking type, who knows which grain to send, where, who to bribe, and when to disappear for a week on spiritual retreat. Your village's middleman is named Wen. He wears a hat too big for his head and always smells faintly of sesame oil and panic. He tells you stories of spies along the river. The government sends them disguised as monks, he whispers. They test loyalty with compliments. If you brag, you're arrested. You assume he's paranoid. Then, you hear someone actually was arrested last week for boasting about his surplus wheat. Historians still argue how effective the surveillance systems were in ancient China. Some claim imperial spies were widespread. Others think local gossip networks did the job just fine. Either way, you keep your mouth shut. You're tasked with delivering a load of iron tools to a nearby town. It's technically legal. Probably. You set off before dawn, cart wobbling behind you road, stretching ahead like a dusty question. The journey takes days. You sleep in stables, eat moldy rice balls, and avoid eye contact at every checkpoint. One guard asks you what's in the cart. Farm tools, you say. He nods, then asks if you've heard about the Emperor's latest edict on rice grain standardization. You say yes. You haven't. He lets you pass. You exhale for a full minute. When you finally arrive, the market is alive with bargaining chaos. Chickens squawk, children shout. A man is loudly advertising miracle soy sauce that doubles as cough syrup. You don't ask. You trade your tools for a modest pouch of salt, some dried mushrooms, and a fine wool sash you're not sure is real. You return home poor in coin, but richer in stories. Later that week, a local official shows up in your village. He wears black robes and carries a ledger scroll the size of your ego before the wall broke it. He asks about your harvest, your trade, and your loyalty to the Emperor. You smile boo low and mention that your roof leaks because nothing says harmless villager like mild home repair complaints. He seems satisfied. But trade never sleeps. The riverboats arrive before dawn, bearing bolts of rough silk bamboo baskets, ceramic jars, and news from upriver. You help unload, and in return, you're given a bar of soap that smells faintly of jasmine. You weep, quietly. That night, your village holds a feast not for a holiday, but because someone finally caught a wild pig. You sit beside Wen, who toasts the gods, the ancestors, and the economy. He's drunk. You smile. As the fire crackles, you lean back, gaze at the stars, and realize you're part of something bigger, messier. Trade is more than money. It's motion. It's risk. It's stories whispered across borders, carved into coin, woven into silk, and salted into every bowl of porridge. And for the first time since returning from the wall, you feel like you've finally found your place, not in war, not in law, but in the flowing, chaotic river of human exchange. Even if it occasionally smells like smuggled fish. Rain is falling sideways, thick as steamed rice. Your roof leaks in 3 places now. You've moved your sleeping mat under the eaves beside the family altar, where the ancestor tablets get better shelter than you do. Someone outside is yelling. A goat, maybe. Or a human pretending to be one, always hard to tell in weather like this. Then comes the scream. Not theatrical. Not drunken. Just sharp, short, and real. You grab your cloak and dash into the storm. You're not the only one. Half the village is already running toward the riverbank, where torches flicker and shadows shift in frantic motion. You arrive to find chaos. The river has breached. The rains, which started 2 days ago, have been relentless. And now, swollen and furious, the river is devouring its banks, surging into rice paddies, uprooting fences and flooding the lower huts. The homes closest to the water are already half submerged. People wade through waist-deep currents, hauling baskets of clothes, squealing pigs, and in one case, a mildly confused grandmother perched in a washtub. You jump in to help. For the next 2 hours, it's a blur of mud rope, shouted names, and stinging eyes. You tie rafts together. You carry children to higher ground. You slap your cousin awake after he gets knocked over by a floating water buffalo trough. The rain doesn't stop. The river doesn't care. And by nightfall, your village looks like a drowned memory. Welcome to the world of floods, fire, and rebellion, the uninvited guests of ancient Chinese life. You retreat to a hill with the rest of the survivors, wet, shivering, alive. Your uncle builds a fire. Your aunt weeps. Your grandmother mutters about the yellow dragon of the river being displeased. Disaster here is never just nature. It's a sign, a message, a cosmic complaint letter written in wind and water. Historians still debate how much ancient Chinese rulers actually believed in the mystical causes of natural disasters versus how much they just feared the social consequences. Because whenever the rivers flooded, or locusts descended, or temples burned for no reason, people whispered, "The emperor has lost the mandate of heaven." That phrase, not just metaphor, it's revolution bait. You've heard the tales. When the Qin dynasty collapsed, it started with famine. When the Tang weakened, it began with floods. Every peasant revolt began not with a sword, but with hunger, mud, and silence too long held. The rain continues for 2 more days. Then suddenly it stops. But the silence it leaves behind is worse. You walk through what's left of your village. Mud-caked homes, flattened fields, a few bloated fish flapping hopelessly in rice ditches. A boy finds a turtle in his bed. He names it Heaven's Apology. No one laughs. Then comes word from Upriver Rebellion. Apparently, a farmer-turned-mystic has declared himself the true son of heaven, and people are flocking to him by the hundreds. His followers wear white headbands. They chant about justice, fairness, and tax reform. Also, They burn tax records. Very popular. You've heard this before. Every few decades, someone rises claiming the gods have spoken. Sometimes it's true. Sometimes it's just charisma and a good harvest year. But the people listen. Because belief is cheap, but hope is priceless. Your village is split. Some say it's dangerous. Stay quiet, wait it out. Others say this is our moment. You stay silent, not out of fear, but fatigue. Later that week, a local official patrol arrives. They carry swords. They ask questions. They leave messages posted in black ink. Those who join rebels shall meet heaven through steel. Subtle. You help rebuild. Slowly, quietly. You fix the roof. You drain the rice paddies. You coax the goats back from wherever they fled. You dry out the ancestor tablets and relight the incense. But things are shifting. The temple bell rings at odd hours. The taxes double without warning. The village, well once clear, now tastes faintly of rust. A sign, says your grandmother, of what she won't say. And then one morning, you wake to ash in the air. The far mountain is burning. Not wildfire, man-made fire. Rebellion marching nearer. The village elder calls a meeting. You gather in the square. Arguments erupt. Some want to flee to the capital. Others want to dig trenches and fight. One man says we should send offerings to both sides and pray we're forgotten. Honestly, not the worst idea. Your cousin suggests writing, "We're just rice farmers on the rooftops" in black ink. Someone laughs, nervously. You sit on a stone watching smoke spiral across the sky. You realize this is how dynasties end. Not in gold and glory, but in cracked earth, rising water, and hungry men shouting about justice. And as the winds shift and a distant horn sounds from beyond the trees, you wonder, not whether the emperor has lost heaven's mandate, but whether anyone ever truly has it. The horn sounds again, louder this time, closer. You grip the edge of the stone you're sitting on, watching the smoke twist like a dragon tail above the trees. Somewhere out there, someone is waving a banner with a new name, a new dream, a new right to rule. And you're still here, still in your patched robe, still smelling faintly of damp rice and nervous sweat, still trying to figure out if today is the kind of day you keep your head down or raise it. The village elder makes the decision for you. No more waiting, he says. We flee. So you pack. Not much. A few rice balls, a bundle of clothes, your brother's jade bead bracelet, your grandmother's incense pouch. The ancestor tablets are wrapped carefully in cloth. No one dares leave those behind. Before sunrise, you join the stream of villagers moving southward. Children on backs, goats on ropes, carts, creaking under the weight of lives half carried, half remembered. You pass other villages burned silent, swallowed by tall grass. Once, a road sign is smeared with ash. Someone has crossed out the name and written simply "gone." By the third day, your feet are blistered and your heart is hollow. The air hums with the sound of too many people walking without speaking. Then a fork in the road. To the left, the river swollen and murky but passable by raft. To the right, the mountains steep and slow but safe. No one agrees. The group splits. You go with the river group. You build a raft out of bamboo rope and hope. Your little brother stands in the center, gripping the ancestor bundle like a sacred scroll. Your uncle steers. You bail water. A chicken sits defiantly at the edge, staring into the wind like it's daring the gods to try something. The river takes you. It's rough. It's cold. It's not gentle. but it carries you onward past scorched fields, broken bridges, temples still smoldering. You see the remains of war, but you also see something else. A woman boiling soup in the ruins of a granary. A child skipping stones beside a burnt tree. Two men sharing a single cloak in the rain, still laughing about something you'll never know. And slowly, something strange stirs in you. Not hope, not yet, but something quieter, a kind of rootedness, a resilience so deep it doesn't need speeches or banners or mandates. You think about all that's past the mud, the hunger, the lashes of bamboo rods, the love that was more arranged than felt the ghosts, the gods, the cold hands of the wall pressing into your back. And yet, you're still here. You dock downstream near a new village. It's rough half-built, scattered, but there's rice in the fields and smoke from cooking fires. They welcome you with caution, then with tea. You find work, nothing new, hauling bricks, pounding grain, fixing roofs. Your hands remember, your feet remember. So does your back. But you no longer dream of the palace, or the exams, or the perfect robe. Now, you dream of a quiet bowl of hot soup that stays warm all the way to the last sip. One evening, a traveling scholar passes through. He's fleeing the north. His robes are torn, his books waterlogged, but his voice still clear, still proud. He gathers the village by firelight and reads from an old scroll a poem about resilience, about rivers' storms and the lotus that blooms from mud. You sit beside your brother, listening. The scholar looks at you. "You there," he says. "What do you believe in?" You think for a long moment, then say balance. He nods. Good answer. That night, you sleep under a roof built by strangers, warmed by a fire stoked by people who once feared you. And as you drift into dreams, you understand something final. You were never meant to conquer this place. You were meant to survive it. And in that, you did what emperors, generals, and rebels all failed to do. You lasted, not with banners or swords, but with cracked hands, stubborn feet, and a heart that refused to forget how to start again. The sky is dark now. The stars blink slowly overhead like ancient witnesses nodding in silence. You lie on your mat body, finally still breath soft as the echoes of your journey settle like dust in the corners of your mind. You made it through the river crossings, the whispers of rebellion, the ache of hunger, and the sting of bamboo rods. You walked through temples full of ghosts and fields full of work. You bowed to emperors you never saw and to ancestors who never left. And now, at last, there is quiet. No horns, no commands. Just the sound of wind weaving through trees. The distant murmur of someone humming a lullaby. Maybe your mother. Maybe just memory. You are warm. Your hands are calloused, but they've built something. Your feet are blistered, but they've carried you forward. Your heart still beating. Still here, still enough. Let the rains come. Let the walls rise. Let the dynasties crumble. You've already survived the hardest thing a day in ancient China. And tomorrow, you'll rise again. But for now, close your eyes. Let your muscles melt. Let your breath deepen. You've earned this rest. The kind that isn't just sleep, but peace. The kind that says you were here, and that was enough.